Let's just jump in, man. Y'all ready? It's so good to see you guys today. I'm really excited about what God's doing and what God's going to do in your lives. I feel like we're just feel freedom all over because we've been in a series about getting away, and a lot of it's dealing with just the pressures of life that make us just want to flee. And today I want to talk about a guy that's one of my favorite guys in the whole Bible, and his name's Elijah. And you'll find the story I'm talking about in Kings, in the book of Kings, and it's in 1 Kings. And this guy has just the coolest story. Now, he's a prophet, okay? And you got to understand about a prophet. Now, we think, wow, a prophet is like the greatest thing ever. Now, prophets were famous. Like, everybody knew their name. But a prophet's job was not the greatest job in the world. And here's why. What I've found in my life is that in general, I don't like people telling me and pointing out the things I'm doing wrong. Have you found that? How many of you guys get just real excited when somebody says, see what you're doing? It's all wrong. We usually don't accept that very well, right? And so these prophets would come along and they're saying things like, you've neglected the will of God. And they would use harsh terms like, you've prostituted yourself. Everybody loves to be called a prostitute. I found that. It's like this, and it's like, and here's what God's going to do. You're going to be slaughtered. You're going to be taken captive. You're going to be carried out of your home into foreign lands. People love to hear stuff like that. It's real encouraging. So everybody hated the prophets. Now, here's what Elijah's thing was. Ahab was king at the time, and he had married a non-Jew, and that was against God's law and God's will, and he was married to a woman called Jezebel, right? Now, when we say Jezebel, nobody names their kids Jezebel anymore. Right? Why? It wasn't a good thing, right? Like, you never want to say, you're a Jezebel. I mean, people don't like that either. So, there was Ahab, and he had gone outside the will of God, and so God sends Elijah, the prophet, to Ahab, and he says, it's not going to rain on the land until the word of God. Till we hear a word from God, receive a word from God. Now, when drought happens, everybody suffers, right? But if you're the person that brought on the drought, is that a popular move? So Ahab was hated and despised because, and this again I found in my life to be true. You may not have found this to be true. But I don't see things as being my fault. The person who points them out, I would say it's their fault. Right? So like, they blame Ahab for the drought, when really they brought it on themselves. But nobody likes to think, oh, we brought the drought on. It was Ahab's fault, right? Ahab brought on not Ahab, why do I keep saying that? Elijah. Are y'all following me? I can't even follow myself. See, you got to be sharp at this church because you don't ever know what I'm going to say that's wrong. I expect you to just know what I'm talking about. This is a tongue for you, okay? I'll just say it however I want to, and you just hear it like it's supposed to be. Will that work for everybody? Okay. Elijah brought on a drought because of the sins of Ahab. Is everybody clear now? Because I was messing with your minds right then. All right. So it was Elijah's fault that the drought came. But it wasn't really. It was just everybody hated him because of it. So Elijah goes through this whole thing where God takes him to this brook and God feeds him. The birds come and feed him and the water of the brook until the brook dries up because of the drought, right? Then God miraculously gets this widow woman to save Elijah basically the whole time of the drought. So Elijah maintains through the drought, and God supernaturally supplies for him. And it's a great story. But you can see and you can understand why he's hated so bad, and especially by Jezebel. Now, this is something else I've observed, not in my life, of course, but in other people's, is that when mama ain't happy, there ain't nobody happy. Right? So we can't tell by the Bible whether Ahab had a big problem with Elijah or whether Jezebel just drove him to it. Right? Because if Jezebel's like, we've got to kill Elijah, Ahab's like, we got to kill that Elijah. You know what I mean? You guys who are married, you know what I mean. Don't agree in here. Are you crazy? I have no clue what you're talking about, Todd. We'll talk about it later when it's private. Because I don't have to deal with that. I got a perfect life. It's awesome. Okay, so Ahab just can't stand Elijah, and he's hunting him out. He's trying to kill him. And he has this prophet who was a friend of Elijah's, and they had been out. And every time a prophet would come and tell Ahab where Elijah was, God would take him and move him. And so when they would go to look for him where somebody told Ahab he was, he wouldn't be there, right? And so Ahab would get furious and kill whoever told him. So a prophet meets Elijah, it's his friend, and he says, go tell Ahab I want to see him. And he's like, you're crazy. There's no way. Because as soon as I leave, God's going to call you somewhere else and you're going to follow him. And then when I come back, I'm going to look like a fool and he's going to kill me. And he says, no, I promise you that I will. I'll go meet with Ahab. So he goes and meets with Ahab. And Ahab agrees and he meets with Elijah. And Elijah says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to see whose God really is God. We're going to have a great God-off. This great God-off. So here's what happens. And this you can follow in 1 Kings chapter. This is like in 18. All right, so there's 950 prophets of Baal and Asher, right? And Baal and Asher are the false gods of the day. Actually, the gods that Jezebel had brought into the kingdom with Ahab. And so Ahab began to set up these monuments and these altars to these gods. And so there were 950 prophets to these false gods. And so Ahab gathers all of the false prophets and Elijah, and they go up on the mountain, and Elijah says, here's what we're going to do. We're both going to put our sacrifice on the altar, but we're not going to light it. And you take your gods, you pray to your gods, and they'll call down fire, and they'll consume the sacrifice. And then I'll call on my God, and we'll see whose God is really God. The great God off. That's where I got that. So like there have this. So this is like in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 20. And so what they did is, I'm trying not to read this whole thing to you. So like they start, Ahab says here, Elijah, man, the heat's getting to me. You don't know how hot it is up here. Like, these lights are frying. I feel like a McDonald's cheeseburger. Okay, besides that. I felt the heat go away. It was like, whew, that's... All right, so the video people hate that, though. So here's what happens. The prophets of Asher and Baal, they take their calf and they cut it and they put it on the altar and they place the wood around, and they start praying out to their gods. And Elijah says, you go first, you do your thing. And so what they do is they start praying out and crying out, and they're wailing and cutting themselves and just acting a fool. Have you ever seen religious people? And you're like, are they really serving a God, or is this is getting weird? Like, right? So they're doing all this, and here's why I love Elijah so much. This is Elijah that I'm really connected to. And verse 27, it says, "And at noon Elijah mocked them, saying, 'Cry aloud, for he is a god. Either he is musing, or he is relieving himself, or he is on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and must be wakened.'" Like, I see Elijah, he's sitting over there kicked back, chewing on an apple or something. And these guys are dancing in the sun, working hard to get their God to do something, and Elijah starts mocking them. I mean, I love it because, like, he's making fun of them. He's like, "Oh, wait, your God, he's probably sleeping. Maybe you got to get louder. Oh, maybe he's using the bathroom. Maybe he's just busy using the bathroom." Like, I saw him with the Sports Illustrated earlier, He's making fun of them. He's just wearing them out. And so as they go on, they cut themselves, they cry out with words, and blood's gushing. So it turns into this slaughtered mess of just everything. And midday passed, and they raved on until the time of the offering of the obligation, but there was no voice, no one answered, no one paid attention. And then Elijah said to the people, this is verse 30, "Come near me." And all the people came near him, and he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. And Elijah took 12 stones, and according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, "Israel shall be your name." And with the stones he built up an altar in the name of the Lord, and he made the trench around the altar as great as would consume 2 sheas of seed. Okay, so what he does is he puts the wood in the altar. Then he says, "Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go get jars of water, barrels of water. I want you to pour it on the wood, pour it on the altar." Now, how many of you guys have tried to start a fire with wet wood? It's difficult, right? So he covers the wood, says, like, "Go get more." Say, "Go get more." He says, "Go get more." Fills it so much that the trench that he's dug around it is full and overrunning with water. And then he cries out to God and says, "God, you're the one true God." And God displays his power that day. And fire comes down from heaven, consumes the sacrifice, the wood, and the water. This is awesome. Then Elijah slaughters the 950 prophets of Baal and Asher. It's a great victory, right? I mean, this guy stands alone before 950. Do you get that number? I mean, nearly 1,000 prophets. How many people are here? A couple of thousand, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, who knows? There was an audience. The pressure's on, right? He calls down fire from heaven, and God comes through, and then he slaughters 950 prophets of Baal. He slaughters 950 prophets of Baal. And we would say, "Man, that Elijah dude ain't afraid of nothing. He walks in the power and the authority of God, and no one can stand against him." The king pursues his life, and he stands and he walks before him, slaughtering his prophets at the same time. verse 46, and the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and that's not, I'm sorry, this is another part. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. That's victory, right? Then Elijah says it's going to rain. This is great. He just called down fire. Then Elijah says it's going to rain. So he sends his assistant and he says, go see if there's any clouds. He sends Ahab and he tells Ahab, go back. It's going to rain. You better get out of here. Your chariot's going to get stuck. There's going to be so much rain. Sends his assistant, his disciple, says, there's not a cloud in the sky. He says, go look again. There's not a cloud in the sky. Go look again. There's a cloud the size of a man's hand. All of a sudden, man, Elijah's like, we got to get out of here. It's fixing to rain. And the rains come. Elijah calls down fire from heaven. He calls down rain, and it rains in a drought. This is the funniest part to me, though. In verse 46, it says, and the hand of the Lord was on Elijah, and he gathered up his garment and ran before Ahab to the entrance of Jezreel. You get this? Ahab leaves in a chariot. Elijah's sitting on the mountain, praying to God, sending out. He's there for what, half an hour? Then God, he sees this cloud, it's going to rain. Elijah pulls his dress up, which that's weird, and takes off running. And this dude's booking it. I mean, he's just he's moving. He outruns the chariots that left way before him to the entrance of the city. So not only is he an awesome prayer, he's calling down fire and rain, he's fast. And he's booking, he's hauling. And we would say, man, that Elijah is just on top of the world. But then the next verse, chapter 19, verse 1, the very next verse, Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed the prophets with a sword. And Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life as one of them before this time tomorrow. Verse 3. This is phenomenal to me. And he was afraid, and he rose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judea, and left his servant there. But he himself carried a day's journey into the wilderness, came and sat down under a broom tree, and he asked the Lord that he might die. That's odd, isn't it? Talking about wanting to get away. And we look at that and we think, how can this guy who just called down fire from heaven, this guy who just outran chariots, this guy who held the rain and calls down rain, this guy who slaughtered how many? 950 prophets of Baal with the sword, and one woman threatens his life. He goes to the wilderness, a day's journey, sits down under a tree and asks God to die. Women, boy. Puzzling, isn't it? So what happened? How do we get to that place where we can be living and have victory and have our lives going, and then all of a sudden be sitting under a tree going, God, just kill me. Make it easy. I don't want to feel the pain, but please just kill me. Take me out. And I feel like I know what Elijah's going through. I feel like we have these victories, but man, every time you go through these major times where like God just becomes so powerful and so strong, and then it seems like everything in the world comes against you, but it's probably just one woman. Have you ever noticed that we always use the terms all and always and no one? Watch what happens here. Elijah's speaking to God. This is later on, and I'll get into how he gets here in a minute. But later on he says this. God asked Elijah, what are you doing? And he says, I've been jealous. This is in 19:10. I'm sorry, you guys who are following along. In chapter 19, verse 10. He says, I've been very jealous for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the people of Israel, have forsaken your covenant, thrown down your altars, and killed your prophets with the sword. And I, even I, only am left, and they seek my life to take it away. And Elijah's like, I'm the only one left. And him and God have this time and this encounter. And this is kind of cool because in verse 18, God's talking to Elijah and he says, he's telling him what he's going to do. In verse 18, God says, yet I will leave 7,000 in Israel, all the knees that have not bowed to Baal. And I think God tells him that to say, oh, by the way, the only one, I'm going to leave these 7,000 others also. See, I think our perspective gets really messed up sometimes. We lose sight. First of all, we lose sight of the victories. We lose sight of the good things in our past. Why is it? And I see this in people all the time. We lose sight of the great things in our past, but man, we will not let go of the horrible, horrific, tragic things that are in our past. And then we come to this place where we forget what God has done and we forget the victories we've had. And we come to this place and we're threatened by one and we think it's thousands. And then we're threatened by one, and we think it's thousands, and then when we see ourselves as the only one, when there are thousands. Don't we just get a skewed view of life, of the way things really are? I'm the only one, and everybody's after me, when the reality is there's thousands of you in the same shape, and there's only one after you. And it happens all the time. But today I don't want to just dwell on the problem because I think we can all now see that there was this issue, right? But I want to talk about what could have been the cause of the problem and what we can do in our lives to combat this problem. And I think it's a pretty simple thing. As he's going out, God starts talking to him. He's gone out into the wilderness and he asks if he could die. And he laid down, and this is verse 5 of chapter 19, and he laid down and he slept under a broom tree. And behold, an angel touched him, and he said to him, arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was, at his head was a cake. Oh, love me some cake. I don't get to eat cake anymore. And it was probably some kind of like manna. What is it? Cake. There was cake by his head. And he woke up and he thought he was dreaming. No, it doesn't say that. Arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was a cake at his head, baked on the hot stones, and a jar of water. And he ate and drank, and he laid down again. And he passed out again. And an angel came to him the second time and touched him. Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. And he arose and he ate and he drank and went in the strength of that food for 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the Mount of God. And what happens there is he goes into a cave. And as he's in that cave, he meets with God. As he's in that cave, God says, go out and stand on the mount before the Lord. This is verse 11. And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake, and the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, the sound of a low whisper. And Elijah heard it, and he wrapped his face in his cloak, and he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. And behold, there came a voice to him. God was in the whisper. But I want to say, how did he get to meeting with God from God kill me? How did he get from fire and rain from heaven, slaughter the prophets, outrun the chariots, to God kill me? And I think what happened, and this, you're going to laugh at me. I think he got tired and hungry. Because he went from God kill me to meeting face to face with God and a food that sustained him for 40 days' journey. But he got tired, physically tired, and he got physically hungry. And when he did, he lost sight of the things that God had done. He lost perspective, he lost scope, he lost passion, he lost energy, he lost drive. And I think what God is showing me is I need to eat more. No, I don't think that's it. Eat more cake. I think that's the theme today. So you say, what I learned at church? Eat more cake. You say, Todd told me. Go to your doctor. God said eat more cake. I don't think that's it, but I think what God's showing me, and in my experience, and I can tell you I'm experienced in this, we can have the greatest victories in the world, and we can be on top of the world, and we can stand with thousands and have the perspective that we can conquer anything. But when we start losing our health, we slip into this place where I'm the only one left. Everybody's against me. I can't remember what God did in the past. And I know in my personal journey, man, I had a heart attack two years ago. And it took me a long time to get over it. And when you lose your health, man, it really messes you up. Spiritually, perspective, scope, everything. So what I think God is showing us is that it's not as bad as we think it is. And this may sound crazy, but I think if we eat right, sleep right, take care of ourselves, I think our physical health is directly related to where we are spiritually. Because after Elijah gets healthy, he meets with God. He hears God. He finds God. Not through the chaos, through the fire and the wind and storms and rocks and all this. He finds God in that quiet whisper. And to find something in a whisper, man, you got to be tuned in. Your scope's got to be right. And I wonder about my own life, how much of not hearing God or how much of those feelings of wanting to flee come from the chaos and busyness of life. The chaos and busyness of grabbing something to eat that's horrible whenever and wherever I can get it. Not resting. Not getting the sleep we need. Not taking care of our physical health. And so what I'm telling you today is God cares about how you're doing. He cares about your physical health. He cares about what you're eating. He cares about how much rest you're getting. It's important. Do you know that most of the book of Leviticus deals with what you can eat? And what you shouldn't eat? Oh, Todd, we're not under the law anymore. Let's have fried bacon on a stick. God made it. It must be good. And it is good. But is the best thing for me? And when a lifestyle, and I'm not saying, we need to go back and get under the law, but the law was given because we didn't have nutritionists saying this is bad for you or that. God was saying, hey, dummies. Because these guys they still drug women by the hair and carried clubs. It's K people that God's given the law to, right? So they don't know. They're like, try that. Guy tries it, falls over dead. Don't eat that. That's their how else do they know? They're just going out in the world trying stuff. Dirt, bad. Don't eat that. Don't eat the yellow snow. They're just trying stuff, God gives them his law and he tells them, hey, this is a better way to live. This is how you live healthy. But then he says, in that day, Messiah will come. He will redeem the world to God. He will restore all things. And in that day, I will write my laws on their hearts and they will know me and know my will. See, God has made himself known to us, and he's shown us and taught us the better way to live. Through what Jesus did, we've been made right with God. And so we know what God's will is for us. We know him intimately from within, not from without, not through a book, but through a personal experience. And so we talk and we share life, and he leads and guides us, and he speaks through other people, and he shows other things like what we need. We need sleep, we need rest, we need the right food, we need to take care. There's medicines now to take care of these illnesses. There's things that we can do to be healthy. And I'm telling you this, that a healthier life is going to change your scope and your perspective. When you feel good and you're rested, isn't it different? We call the weekend, but how many of you feel worse on Monday than any other day of the week? Why? Because we go twice as hard on the weekend as we do during the week. The weekend, we're supposed to rest from our labor, right? Sabbaths. People are like, man, I don't believe in murder. 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill. I don't believe in adultery. Thou shalt not commit adultery. I don't believe in lying. Thou shalt not lie. Thou shalt keep the Sabbath holy. It was one of the 10 most important things God wanted mankind to know, that killing other people's not good. That sleeping with your neighbor's wife is not good. That lying is not good. That coveting is not good. That chasing after other gods is not good. They're not going to help you. But that taking a day set apart for rest is going to help you. It's going to make you have a better life. He commands it. Rest. Eat right. Be healthy. And I'm telling you, the healthier we get, our scope and our perspective change. And if you've lost God, It might be as simple as correcting your sleeping habits. If you've lost God, you lost your scope, your perspective, you lost your way, it might be as simple as correcting the way you eat. I'm telling you this, man. Other things that are taking our health and killing us are our addictions. They're bad for you. They're killing you. They're hurting you. And you'll lose God in the process. You'll lose scope. You'll lose perspective. We need an overall health. Being saved, okay, the word saved, sozo, it means being made whole. Wholly redeemed, wholly completed is a great way to say that. I think the best translation of the word sozo is wholly or holistically healed, made well. And we think, wow, God saved my soul. But He wants more than that. He wants to save all of you. He wants our physical bodies healed because there is a connection. Now, I don't know if you know this, but we have a connection between our physical bodies and our souls. While we walk in this world, like I can't send my soul over there, run get me some milk. You know, we can't do it. It's like we have to, we're one, so one affects the other, right? And we have to be holistically healthy. Body, soul, mind, spirit, the whole thing. And I think that's what God wants for us. So my message for you today, in a summary, so you get this, is we have to eat better, we have to sleep better, and when we do, we'll hear God in the whispers. Okay? Everybody good? All right, I want to pray for you.
She said, don't